I was listening to Bill Polian talking about drafting Edgerrin James yesterday before Edgerrin went into the Hall of Fame and had a great speech. And he's like, everybody thought we were drafting Ricky Williams 4th overall. It was not a no-brainer. Like, every member of the media thought we were drafting him. The fans at the Fan Fest were pretty angry when we didn't draft Ricky Williams. We don't
get enough of those anymore, do we?
What, the fans were angry because we didn't draft a guy?
No, like complete curveballs. Like, oh my god, it'd been like the Jets this
Sammy
year drafting
Watkins.
But it's just like, what if the Jets had just drafted Justin Fields number 2? We would have fallen out of our chairs.
Yeah, I know.
Ricky Williams was really famous. Like, I think Bill Polian's like that at that point in time. Running backs were kind of quarterbacks equal, and Ricky Williams, I would say, coming into the draft in our last 25 years, that guy was pretty hyped up. He didn't he win the Heisman? Obviously, yep. UT. I mean, it was just the hype. He was treated like a Tua, like an all-timer. Clowney, like he's just an all-time draft prospect going into the draft, right? Turns out actually he reresurrected his career.
Yeah, he did.
Some of those numbers.
Polian said he went to his pro day and it was not impressive, and that's what sealed it. But it felt like a pretty wide consensus, maybe not outside, but within the league, that there wasn't much debate, at least in the final months, about Zach Wilson versus Trey Lance. You can understand. I mean, ultimately, the league, Justin Fields went several picks later, but Trey Lance went right after him. And right now, here's the headline. Many times tonight, we weren't on the same page, said Wilson. I just got to make good decisions. 95% of a quarterback's job is decision-making. It's early, so these quotes can be very general. But they get really specific when you've been handed the starting job of the New York Jets.
Wasn't there a New York Post headline that are like,
yeah, the New York Post headline was Jets fans better hope it's better than this, or something like that. I'll find it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Jets aren't very good, so it's gonna be an up and down season for the young kid. But what I do not understand is now seeing Trey Lance again. It doesn't fucking matter what the media, what fans think. It is the general manager and head coach's job to get it right. Like, ultimately, it's like, well, everyone would have taken Tua. Yeah, the Brian Flores and Chris Greer are not everyone. They are paid to know the better player. That is their job. Not the hype, not Mel Kiper's board, not what Haberman, who gives a shit. And I don't understand just going on the field. Like, I didn't know that much about Trey Lance. Most people didn't. Smaller school guy. Up until the last month or two, he kind of like came into our lives. He was not like that for these people in the league. And Joe Douglas, who was, a pretty high level, he's very highly thought of. I can't imagine him just standing next to Trey Lance, standing next to Zach Wilson. Like, again, you'd be like, well, how would they have known? That's their fucking job. And you and I go to practice. We're going next week. Like, you just go out to practice and go, Trey Lance. It's like this guy could go one in any
This is what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, and Zach Wilson, again, I liked him during the fall. I thought he was really good. But he's a little smaller. It was like Trey Lance. They both, like, he wasn't playing anybody, and I just.
But he was playing, and that's what elevated him.
He was playing. I just wonder, it could be difficult because he does not have the physical tool. Like, Trey's is more physically gifted. Yeah. Now, he was just a gamer, made some great throws. He is very talented. But I just, being at the Niner practices and just seeing the physical characteristics of this dude, if they both become players, like, I just don't see how Trey Lance is not a better player.
You know what's funny is that it's in the headline
and if Kyle's going to like him, they run the same fucking offense, right?
I wonder if Kyle would, we assume, well, this is what LaFleur did, so Kyle would have done it. I'm with you. I'm not convinced Kyle would have drafted Zach Wilson after seeing Trey Lance in person. The headline from the Post was, Jets fans can only hope Zach Wilson will be better than this.
Their team stinks.
I was thinking about him and Justin Fields, too, along with Trey. And in some ways, it feels like, again, we haven't seen a ton of the Trey Lance within the last year, especially against that level of competition. Certainly not Fields's, but it feels like of the three of them, Lance is least dependent on being a gamer, quote unquote, right? When Zach Wilson says 95% decision making. I don't know that watching him last year, it didn't seem like he had too many hard decisions to make, even though he wasn't playing with, the Alabama receivers. He was playing with pretty good receivers who were all physically better than most of the guys they were going up against. And his time to throw was off the charts, right? And he could just run around and make plays. Decision making really Doesn't feel like it was a big part of the 2020 season that vaulted Zach Wilson to number 2. And so that's where Trey, like when we go back to the, Mahomes 2.0, feels a little aggressive at this point in time just because that's a lot to put on a guy. But I do think the thing watching Trey Lance that is most impressive is I don't think he's not dependent. Just like Russell Wilson's not dependent on making gamer plays, right? Russell looks good in practice because Russell does the basic things really well. Trey Lance, I think, is going to look good in practice because he does the basic things really well. Now, the physical things are really going to show themselves when it comes time to make plays in a game, but he's not – I'm with you. I do wonder the lack of the physicality as it relates. Now, I didn't watch Zach Wilson and ever think he's got a weak arm. Like, he is athletic.
But
like, he
what
can
I
do
don't
things.
understand – and listen, I was on a different page as a TV scout and evaluator than Kyle. And I would imagine the Jets, clearly, they like Zach Wilson more than Justin Fields. I just have a hard time just saying without hesitation that I'd have to get in some arguments in a draft room of like, why is Zach Wilson? Because again, we're not just. It's not even. I know he had a bad practice or whatever. It was a scrimmage.
A brutal practice, according to one headline, John.
Brutal. Okay. It's not even about week 1, right? It's not about week 5. When you draft a quarterback really high, you're thinking like Bill Polian did with Peyton Manning for the rest of your life. Like it's changes lives. We are going to the Bears got really lucky, and Ryan Pace specifically, that Mitch Trubisky didn't ruin his career because he almost did, and he might get a lifeline in this kid. He might get a lifeline, and that's rare, right? That you get to draft 2 first round. I bet if we did a study, not often teams took 2 first-round quarterbacks with the same general manager in a 4-year span.
I mean,
right?
The Cardinals did it in 2 years, right? But you're right.
And wasn't there an article that's the first time that had happened since like the Broncos in the 80s, and that was back-to-back
years.
But it might happen sometimes, but I doubt it's with the same administration. That's what makes it unique. I didn't know that much about Trey Lance. So when I talked about him, I just rode the hype with just my friends in the league telling me about him. But now that I've laid eyes on him and seen him at practice, and I had seen, like all of us, Justin Fields. Like I valued all the physical shit that he brought to the table.
Deck.com/ham. Protect your gear.
Introducing the newest Instant Win Challenge from DraftKings. Wildcards. Download the DraftKings app now. Promo code HAM when you download it. Claim your first wild card for free. And then I'd seen him take Dabo and Venables and kick their ass. Like if I was placing bets right now, I'm betting on Fields and I'm betting on what I now see of Trey Lance and just knowing Kyle, that combination, over Zach Wilson. I just am. And I never understood why it was just always such a lock. I didn't get it. And clearly it was. Like, I don't even think it was a discussion for the Jets. And I think the Niners, it's going to be one of those things, a little bit like Once Upon a Time when Sammy Watkins somehow went and then Khalil Mack just fell to the Raiders. Ironically, he didn't only played for him for 3 or 4 years. But, like, you just sometimes get gifted stuff that is sometimes in the draft, it is a little out of your control if you're not drafting 1, right? If you're drafting 5, 6, 7, 3, you just need some other shit to happen, right, to get the guy you want. Because if a guy goes, the Warriors just got Kuminga and the Moody. Well, they needed those guys. Joe talked about, like, they're bored. Like, they both had those guys as top 5 guys, which I don't think he's lying. I think he's telling the truth. But if that's true, you need those guys to not get picked.
Yeah. Like Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, we could go on and on and on with examples.
Because this show was adamant about no Mac Jones. I would have struggled if the situation was like, I would have rather had Justin Fields than Zach Wilson.
If the Niners were at 2.
At 3, let's just say some other Trey Lance had gone 2.
Yeah, I'm just saying 2 would have been a much harder decision than 3, it feels like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because in the end, if Fields had gone 4, right, if it had been boom, 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 not that you necessarily over time, it doesn't matter that Mahomes didn't go 1 spot after Trubisky. The fact that he's better, right, is all that matters. Yeah. But as of the fact that it's right now, that's who the Jets then were deciding between.
I understand the league was a little down on him. I mean, but once upon a time, Mahomes and Watson went 10 and 12. So to think that all these teams know what they're doing when it comes to quarterback play has been proven they don't, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and the Texans really like Deshaun Watson, clearly.
But I think that happens a lot, where sometimes
But my point is that I think with a quarterback, more than any other position, for whatever reason, you get caught on something you like. Trey Lance had less things for whatever reason. I don't know exactly what it was because I had people telling me that their write up on Justin Fields actually wasn't really anything bad. Might have been a little bit like, he's a big time 5-star guy, but like, fuck that. Every other position, that's how they get talked about.
Yep.
I know the Bears have really liked him, but bottom line is, I would bet. I feel pretty confident. Now, I guess the one thing would be the Bears. If Nagy got fired, he could go through some turmoil in the organization. But he's just more talented than Zach Wilson. Like, he just simple. Like, if Zach Wilson and Justin Fields were both at Ohio State last year, Justin Fields is the starting quarterback, right? Or Clemson or wherever they were. Like, Justin Fields is the starting quarterback. Well, I know
so. But he wasn't at Georgia, and he was more talented than Jake Fromm.
And that was a decision that.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, these things like, it's easy in hindsight to be like, teams have circumstances. The same reason Kyle Shanahan didn't really do much studying on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, even though he clearly needed a quarterback. But his circumstance was, I kind of know what we're about to do. So, we're going to address a couple other things, and then something falls in my lap. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody's
Fields. Like, I think people overthought it. They use all these teams with whatever logic, and that's where he went.
Yeah, with
Zach Wilson, they just legitimately picked him over these other guys.
That's what I'm saying. I think Zach is in a different boat as it relates to Trey than even Justin is, because the Jets and Joe Douglas doesn't feel like the kind of guy that drafts based on public perception or pressure. No, so they have value, and that what makes it. The other thing that makes those Trey and Zach different is that you would think that the Jets and the Niners would like the same guy based on Kyle and LaFleur.
Well, I'll tell you, one guy told me this about Joe Douglas, and it makes sense. He came up in the Ravens. And one thing the Ravens value that I don't know if Kyle's is big on, but the Ravens like this, and partly because of like Terrell Suggs, who I actually swam by at a pool in Arizona, and he just looked swagged. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. They kind of like the cocky bullshit. It's not even bullshit. Like, they just like I walk in the room, I'm the biggest swinging dick here. And like someone told me, they're like, I bet Joe's going to like that. Because what did Ravens, like, we play like a Raven. Like, they really valued that crap.
Yeah.
Kyle sometimes, like, is he too cocky? Is he too, Kyle wants.
Yeah, is he high maintenance? I just want a guy that's going to come work.
The Ravens kind of like that swag. And you kind of needed it, right, to play the Steelers. So it just, we all look at things different.
Well, the Ravens have properly evaluated swag and the marriage of swag and substance. They weren't drafting guys who were just all show.
No, but Zach Wilson had a lot of substance to him too. My point is that you can be really good at your job in the NFL, right? As an evaluator, and still do things poorly, not do things poorly, but make an individual mistake.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just think that when all the dust settles, like I think the Bears got handed a gift from the gods on Justin Fields, and I think ultimately the Niners. Which, kind of got lucky too. And again, I'm not trying to overreact to this Saturday night practice, but my point is I have a hard time seeing that kid in New York is going to be better than this kid here. Yeah. I can't see it.
It's part of its circumstance too. I mean,
and if things go well for Justin Fields, like, you have to agree, like, Justin Fields, like, that guy's got some fucking elite attributes, right?
Yeah.
And he's played with the lights on the brightest.
But but I know that, like, the Niners, it was not Trey Lance or Justin Fields for the 49ers, I don't believe.
Well, no.
It was Trey Lance.
But again, like, I think Kyle is elite at his job. I think his evaluation on Mac Jones is moronic. So it's like, and I think a lot of people in the league do too. It doesn't
matter. He didn't draft him. Like,
no, I know, but he really liked him, and he thought he'd be good in the NFL. And he's not going to be.
Well, no, I don't think so either. But again, it doesn't matter. He took Trey Lance.
No, I know, but my point is, it just
so we don't really. So what I'm saying is, we don't really know what Kyle's true evaluation is, other than I think he's a good player. Which when is he going to say anybody sucks?
Yeah, but I think when he talked with McVay, you can tell.
Yeah, but I go back to his Monday.
Coaches like Mac Jones.
I know, but I go back to his Monday press conference before the draft. Part of it is he's pissed that people say these types of guys suck. I think that annoys him. That Kirk Cousins sucks. That annoys Kyle Shanahan. That offends him.
Kirk Cousins does not suck.
And Kirk Cousins types. Now, if Mac Jones becomes Kirk Cousins, then he doesn't suck. But I think he's viewed as a Kirk type. Yeah. Although the Vikings wanted Justin Fields. Because that's what happens. When you have that type of quarterback, you're constantly looking for something better.
If I said, Guy Haberman, you have to put $5,000 right now. Does Mac Jones ever equal Kirk Cousins' career?
No.
you wouldn't hesitate to go to no, right?
I'm trying to find somebody who's not as good as Kirk Cousins that I would still say no to.
He's kind of the barometer. Because once you get past him, it starts feeling really shitty.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. I just I think the other thing is circumstance. Like Trey Lance, and I said this when the Niners drafted Brandon Ayuk.
Do you think Mac Jones has as good of a career as Ryan Fitzpatrick?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I don't either.
But that's, I'd say, an above average career. So no,
well, 100%, 100%. But I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick ultimately, I think, was an undrafted free agent and had a way above average career. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick's 38 years old. How long has he been in the NFL? Right, 16 years. He came in like 06. And he's had an incredible career.
I mean, above average is underselling it.
Wouldn't you say it just feels weird because he's played on so many teams? But like everyone he's ever going to meet the rest of his life, they're like, oh, this guy played in the NFL for 18 years. You know, he honestly, when it's all like, if he has a solid year, he could like have the same amount of years in as like Peyton, right?
Well, he's actually had a great career relative to it's just not great. Not like Hall of Fame means great, but he's had a great career. Great.
Yeah, factoring in his draft spot. I
just factoring in what NFL careers are.
Yeah, but I think the hard part, the difference is, he was a 7th round pick, so beyond a great career for a 7th round pick, right? The hard part for Mac Jones is, once Ryan got to like 6 years in, he had amassed like as a 7th round pick, like it's just house money, and just in terms of perception and stuff. When you're drafted 15th overall, I just think we know this. It just stays with you a little while, right? It's like that guy was a 15th overall pick.
Yeah.
It's hard to, like, you can't. Part of what Kirk Cousins, you have to give him his due. Like, ultimately, Kirk Cousins was a mid-round pick, right? It's what's remarkable about us. He's become a really good player. He's going to have a 14, 15-year career, and he was drafted in the 4th round. Like, you can't. Part of what makes Dak so special is just like, you got that in the 4th round.
And I'd say that starts in the 3rd.
In the 3rd, I agree.
It doesn't matter where he was drafted. It's just you had a 15-year career. It was a wild success. That definitely started. The one thing I wanted to say about Zach Wilson here, though, to add is this is part of the Niners thing. We'll see. But you root for Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur. But this is not exactly the stability that he just walked into. And who knows? I mean, if it goes well, that's great. If it goes well, it's great. But then you're switching coordinators. But that's okay. You'll take that problem in a heartbeat. Right now, if you told the Jets you're going to lose Mike LaFleur next year because he becomes a head coach, you'd go, great. That means it went really well. I mean, it's not great, but fine. But if I'm a quarterback, especially if I'm a receiver, there's like 5 places I want to go, and the Niners are right near the top of that list.
Yes.
If I'm a receiver in New England draft, man, go, oh no.
Unless Bill gives you a lot of money, and then you say, oh yes, because he did it for the first time this year.